You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
We are back in studio today.
We are back. It's great to be back.
2019, kicking off the year in the right way.
Yep.
Moving forward. A lot of things going on around the world, but I'm thinking positively.
Yeah, yes. You should. Stay in your Zen moment.
That's right. I think that's the thing is everybody. If everybody watches too much news and everybody thinks about it too much, the negativity creeps in. So we have to think about how we help each other, how we focus on certain things, and how we focus on real issues.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out there that is kind of, I don't know, it's like window dressing almost. It's like people are saying things to incite, these emotional responses, and a lot of it is issues that don't really matter.
Right.
And it's like these side little things that everybody gets off on, but they're actually, in today's world, things that really do matter. Yeah. There's a lot of things that really matter, and we don't talk a lot about that kind of stuff, but we should talk about it. And that's kind of why we created this show.
Yeah.
To talk about things that matter to our industry across the board, regardless of its product, trend, challenges, opportunities, solutions, things like that. And so this is kind of our podcast is an open forum to the industry to talk to itself.
Yeah.
And have these conversations that are meaningful and that matter on important topics.
I totally agree, Andy. And this being Black History Month 2019, we're going to spend the whole month diving into the issues that are important to the African American community, which should in turn be important to the broader footwear community. I have to admit it, and Jasmine's here with us as well. Yes. Jasmine, I'm as waspy as you get, right? I'm white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant from the burbs. When my shirt comes off the beach, people are blinded. I'm as white as they come, but my life has been influenced. If I look back, if I'm honest with myself, my life has been influenced so much by African Americans, whether it's my theology with Dr. King, the shoes I wanted to sport from my first Air Jordan 3s, all the way to the music I listened to the president who was just president, who I have a lot of respect for. So I'm constantly influenced by the African American community. And what we're going to do this month is highlight the ways in which the community has been so important to our industry. And our first guest is I think the perfect person to kind of get us on the right foot and have us thinking about the issues that are important to the community, exploring the history of African Americans within the footwear industry. And that's none other than Dwayne Edwards, founder of PENSOLE Footwear Design Academy. Dwayne, welcome to the Shoe In Show.
Man, thank you very much. Great intro. I love the banter. And I'll remember to wear shades if we ever show up at the beach together.
Yeah, you're gonna need them. I appreciate that. So, Dwayne, let's cut to the chase, man. Tell us, you have your story actually on your website, pensole.com, PENSOLE. But it's just a really, really inspiring story. So to walk us through how a number 2 pencil designed your life, because that's really intriguing to me.
Yeah, I'll try to give you the short version. But I was, I'm one of those kids that was like many kids who was born with the natural gift to draw. And I had 2 older brothers that were also born with the same gift, and my mother was born with the same gift. And all through my early years, they really kind of, helped me refine it and really kind of understand kind of what I was doing with it. And I started drawing anything I could see, honestly. And I remember vividly in the early or late 70s, I started like entering these design competitions in the TV Guide. And for Jasmine, I know you're a little younger than us, but believe it or not, there was a book that would come to your house every week that told you what was on the TV.
I received that. Thank you, Dwayne.
So in this book, there was in the first few pages, there was always this draw me competition, and I would always enter and win like Tippy the Turtle and the Pirate and whatever the little bear pig thing was called. But I would win these competitions, and the reward was $5,000 in cash and prizes. No, as a kid, growing up in Inglewood, all I saw was $5,000.
I want it right now.
The small print. Yeah, I didn't see the small print of cash in prizes, and so it was all prizes. There was no cash exchange. But I was only 12, man, and I was winning these competitions, and the Roar was a scholarship to a school in Minnesota, and that was really the first point where competition kind of came into my life, and then I started drawing football cards, and the first shoe I drew was from the Franco Harris football card back in the 81. Because shoes were much harder to draw than everything else. And I was addicted to it after that. And all through middle school, instead of doing my classwork, I was drawing shoes on 3x5 index cards. And then all through high school, I started customizing sneakers because at Inglewood High School, our uniforms were green and white. So that back then, the shoes came in white, black, white, silver, and maybe if you're lucky, white, red. And so white, red, white, green wasn't an option. So I would go to the local shoe repair shop, get some green dye, get some duct tape, tape up the whole shoe, leave my swoosh there, dye it green, go back to school and have, brand new kicks nobody's ever seen before.
That's awesome.
And so then people just started, hitting me up, for, hey, can you do mine so I can match the uniform? So I did all the basketball teams, both men's and women's, football players. So that was my side hustle in high school in the 80s was customizing. And I also worked at McDonald's. I don't want to talk about that part, but I worked at McDonald's.
It's on your website. I saw it.
I believe I can fries.
Yeah,
no, I believe I can fly. I think that was the difference, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was wild because every time I've done something, I've always been the youngest person to do it. And when I was working at McDonald's, I was one of the youngest people that was up to go to Hamburger University in Illinois. So there is a place called Hamburger University where.
Are you an alum? Are you an alum of Hamburger University?
I didn't go. I bailed out before I got to that point, but I was on track to go to Hamburger University.
Right.
So I was drawing shoes, man. That was what I wanted to do, and I would come and tell my manager, like, hey, I want to be a footwear designer. Like, I give up on that. You can work at McDonald's and have your own store one day, and like, I am not interested in smelling like burgers and fries every day. So I remember the other point was, growing up there, I saw this ad in the LA Times. It's still the smallest ad you can buy in the LA Times, a quarter of an inch by an inch. And it was for this Reebok design competition. And to me, that was a full page ad. And so I entered it, won it, show up. I'm 17. They're expecting someone that's in college or out of college, and Reebok sends me on my way with a couple $100 and say, hey, come see us one day when you finish college. And that was the first day I started this thing called a thank you wall. And my thank you wall is all those people who didn't believe I'd do something or gave up on me. And Reebok was one. My manager at McDonald's who told me, don't do that. My guidance counselor in high school was like, no black kid from Inglewood would ever become a footwear designer. Just join the military.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, all right, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the advice. And so I developed a chip, man, and I developed a competitiveness of proving people wrong. And that really fueled me to be really diligent about going after what I want. Because I just had people who just, did everything they could to tell me I wasn't going to do something. And I remember graduating from high school, luckily, and I got a job working at this temp agency called Robert Half Accountants, and my job was to file papers at this footwear company called LA Gear. And so I worked in the accounts payable department filing papers in alphabetical order. Wasn't that good at it, but I did it. Coincidentally, within a week of me starting there as a temp, they started changing over ownership, and they put these wooden suggestion boxes in every department. Because again, Jasmine, they didn't have email, and they didn't have
Poor Jasmine.
they didn't have things that you could communicate. So if you wanted somebody, you had to call their name on the intercom system, and the entire company heard you. So I got a call one day from the president of the company, Robert Greenberg, and he said, Dwayne Edwards report to the president's office. And I'm like, shit, I'm just a temp, man. Like, what did I do? I'm sure I can't get in trouble for just messing up the alphabet. But what ended up happening was I would put sketches in the suggestion box every day. Not like, hey, you can save the company by doing this and doing that. Like, I would just draw shoes and put them in a box before I start filing papers. And 6 months of doing that, he called me into his office, and he had all 181 of my sketches on his desk. And he's like, I heard you're the person who's been putting sketches in my suggestion box. And he goes, I like your talent. And he said, what school did you go to? And I was like, I just graduated from Inglewood about 6 months ago.
Wow.
And he was like, well, if you're interested, I'd love to hire as an entry-level footwear designer.
Holy cow.
And I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. Like, how much do I pay you to do this? And so I started working at the age of 19, man. That was when I started in the industry back in 1989. And 30 years later, I'm still doing it. But in between that time, I was at LA Gear for about 4 years and left. Robert left the company. He started Skechers.
Yeah.
Once he started Skechers, he asked me to join the company because he had just signed the licensing rights to design footwear for these new streetwear brands called Cross Colors and Karl Kani. So I was designing shoes for Puffy and Snoop and Biggie and Tupac, Nas, Dre, all like when they're teenagers, and I'm, barely over 20. And so I did that for about 4 years. I had my own brand at Skechers called City for a little while. And it was ranked in 2000. It was ranked the number 2 brand by Sporting Goods Business to look out for in 2000. The number 1 was Jordan.
Oh my gosh. And that was a precursor, though, right? That's kind of a precursor.
Yeah, it was, man. And then during that transition, Skechers was going public. So when you go public, you have to, look for ways to save money. And so I was they divested of my brand. So I left the company. Some friends up in Portland said, hey, Nike's looking for somebody to help them take out Timberland. And so my name kept coming up. And so I moved up to Portland because Nike hired me to work, design boots because no one at Nike could design boots. It's a big athletic footwear company.
Right.
And my history was designing shoes in Italy and in Mexico and Brazil, so I can make boots and sneakers.
Don't you just extend the upper?
Yeah, I know, right? Make it a little bit bigger. Yeah. And put it in brown and black. Yeah, pretty similar. Actually, what's funny is Nike was making boots in athletic colors. So they were making gray boots with fuchsia on it and teal and yellow, lime green yellow. The early ACG stuff was actually pretty cool, but it didn't sell that well. So I moved up to Portland or to Beaverton to do that. And about 6 months in, the Jordan brand asked me to do some projects for them. And within like 2 months, they hired me as a senior designer. So I left the Nike side and joined the Jordan side. And about 3 months into my Jordan job, they promoted me to design director. So I became the youngest design director in Nike's history at 30 and stayed there for 11 years, did that, and worked with all the top athletes in the Jordan brand roster, including Michael himself. And one of the things that just stuck with me was when I started back in 89, I never saw anybody. Like, I didn't see anybody who looked like me.
Right.
And I was struggling because everyone who looked like me was in other areas. They were in finance and they were in the mailroom, they were the janitors, they were the receptionists.
Yeah.
But no one was in design. And it wasn't until, Google happened, where I was able to communicate and see people, right? Mm-hmm. And then I found Wilson Smith, and Wilson Smith was the first African American footwear designer at a major brand in '86. And here I am, number 2, 3 years later in '89, and we didn't know each other until I started at Nike in '99.
Holy cow!
2000. Yeah. So when we got together, by that time there was more people there at the time, but it was just crazy how there were still just only a few of us, and it just became a personal mission of mine to kind of reach back to all those kids that are similar to me, growing up in these inner city areas, wanting to be basketball players and wanting to be entertainers and rappers and not knowing that there's other options for them. And so I spent the bulk of my career really showing, kids that there's other options, because I want to play ball too. I grew up in Inglewood. The Lakers played Andy Inglewood at the Forum.
Yeah. The Lake Show, man.
Yeah, they practiced at my high school, which made it worse. Like I would see Magic and Kareem and Worthy every other day.
Golly.
So
What a life.
it was just wild where that idea of being an athlete was right in front of my face because I can see these guys, and I'm 6'1", and I was the shortest one on my basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna happen for me. But really, it was really the kind of when the digital age happened and kids were able to start posting their sketches, and I start to realize like I'm not the only weird kid that grew up drawing sneakers. I really started, really talking to kids online, right? Just emailing them, hey, I saw your design, just do this, try this, and giving them tips. And as a Nike designer, you're not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to communicate to outside people because, they were so scared that you can get sued. The company can sue someone.
Right.
Someone will sue the company because like, oh, you took my idea. So they really they didn't really allow designers to communicate outwardly, but I had to because these kids needed direction and focus. And I was doing that. And it got to a point where that was just so much more rewarding for me than designing another shoe for an athlete or designing another product for kids who are killing themselves for it. It just became more important to me to help people and to share the gift that I was blessed to have. And in 2010, I resigned from my job as design director and took 8 weeks off. And I said, I don't know if I'm coming back. I know I'm going to leave for 8 weeks and try to figure out life. But it just really took a toll on me of just how the industry was and what was going on and consumers killing themselves and getting robbed for stuff that I did. And so I decided to open up a school just to test it, just to see what could happen if I created a place for kids who want to be a designer, a footwear designer, if they would be interested. And we ended up having 40 students from 15 different countries come to Portland to do this one program we did in 2010 for 2 weeks. Crazy intensive. Kids loved it. I loved it because I fell back in love with design. I didn't realize how much the corporate structure took away from me.
Yeah, you got back to the basics, huh?
Yeah, man. It was just purity. I didn't have to worry about margins. I didn't have to worry about, people's criticisms and feedback. And it was just the purity of what I fell in love with in the very beginning. And I wanted to stay in that mental state. And more importantly, to see the light bulbs click for these kids, that was just so much more special to me than going back and designing some more shoes. And so I did end up going back for a little bit, but I told them as soon as I went back, I said, I'm going to leave in 6 months. And I said, I'm going to leave, and I want to stay to try to clean up as much as I can, but I'm going to leave and really focus on being an educator and building PENSOLE. And so I left, and in between that time, I had some of the top design schools in the world email me and say, hey, can you come teach at Art Center? Can you come teach at Parsons? Can you come teach at MIT? Can you come teach in Denmark at Kolding School of Design? So, which was strange for me because I never went to college, dude. So, so here I am teaching at some of the best schools in the world, and I never even stepped foot in college. But I acquired all the knowledge on the job. And so that's how we teach.
Right.
We teach you the way you work. And that was way more impactful than some of the longer drawn out ways that college teaches. So that's kind of the short version. So I've been doing it. I've been doing PENSOLE ever since 2010. And so we're almost 9 years old, and the Academy's grown to 20,000 square foot facility downtown Portland. And we work with all the top footwear brands in the world. And we have over 400 kids working professionally in our industry, and the industry is the complexion is changing slowly.
Yeah.
When I retired in 2011, there was a little under 70 footwear designers of color in the industry. And since I've been gone, we have over 60 kids of color that are just PENSOLE students. So I was able to do almost the same work in 9 years than it took 23 years for me to do in the first place. So it just proved to me it just needs someone to focus in on it.
And what do you feel like, I know, being in corporate made you pivot to doing PENSOLE, but what things did you take from that corporate experience that you feel like has really helped you in your journey right now?
Professionalism. When you're a designer, or even when you work professionally, but I would say when you're a designer, there's no excuses. Like, no one cares if your dog died. No one cares if you missed the bus, if you got a flat tire, if you're having a bad day. You have a job to do, and you need to do it to the absolute best of your ability. And that type of accountability has always stuck with me from day one when I started, because Robert didn't have to give me a chance. Right. He didn't know me. I'm a black kid from the inner city, and he didn't know me. We came from different worlds, and he gave me a chance. And every day, still to this day, I feel like I have to prove that he didn't make a mistake.
Right.
And I've just carried this sense of being responsible and dedicated to my craft, to make sure that the people who helped me along the way know that they didn't waste their time. And what I try to teach our students is that same level of accountability, because no one still cares. What matters is what you say, honoring your word, and what you do. And there's no middle in between that. And really getting them to understand that that's the way you should live your life, but also that's the way you're going to have to be when you become a professional and work for someone else. And it's even more heightened when you work for yourself.
Now, Dwayne, I think we have like this industry conversation that's going on as it relates to diversity. You're driving a lot of that, whether you're in the media or on LinkedIn or the other kinds of places. What are the biggest challenges that our industry has when it comes to diversity and developing more diverse talent at all levels of the corporate structure of a footwear company?
The leadership. Unfortunately, there's not enough people in leadership who matter, who care about it. And they, not to say that they are opposed to it, it doesn't personally impact them. Because it doesn't personally impact them, it's not really a concern. It's not really an issue. It's not really in their face. And the leadership needs to step up to make changes happen around understanding that diversity in general just breeds innovation. Like, you can't tell me you have a room full of 9 people from 9 different places versus 9 people from the same place that you're not going to have different results. And I think fundamentally our industry just needs to understand diversity in general just is a good thing. And when you have too much of the same thing, you tend to repeat history. So I would say, one, that's we just don't understand the fundamentals of diversity can change your business and your product creation teams. And then 2 is just the lack of leadership that genuinely really care because it personally impacts them. And then I would say the last one is just there's the process is not really built for us to show up, people of color show up at companies. Now, what I mean by that is I polled there's 96 schools in the United States that teach design and art. And on average, there's a 9% African-American enrollment in these schools. 40% of those kids don't graduate. So when you have almost half of them don't graduate, so let's just say half don't graduate, so that leaves you with 4.5%. Half of those kids are art students, so they're on a different track, so that leaves you with 275. No, is that 225? Yep. And then half of that 225 aren't really that good anyway to get a job. So that leaves you with a little more than 1%. So 1% of African Americans graduating from college in design and art that are eligible for employment. That's why you don't see enough of us in our industry, because we're not in school.
Yeah.
And we're not in school starting even from a high school level, because art is being, removed from, inner city high schools because it's a budget cut. And then it's still taught a very old way, and the schools don't understand that art and design are 2 different things. And there's not enough schools that actually have design, because fundamentally design is problem solving. And you don't have to know how to draw to solve a problem. So if design was just taught in math, you would see a difference in people wanting to be in math class. If you saw STEM, you take STEM, for instance, we're kind of one of the worst countries in the world in STEM education. And kids are just not interested because the topic they don't understand. But if you put a sneaker in front of them and you said, you know what, there's a job in this industry for every letter in STEM. And you can even add STEAM. You can add an A to it. There's even more jobs to it, right? So if you taught a kid STEAM through sneakers, you know how many kids you'll have interested in that career track. And so it's just our education system is a bit behind. I think kids get dumber the longer they're in school because their whole life outside of school is different.
So we're going to leave it there. We've had a great conversation.
Awesome
with Dwayne.
conversation.
And we actually extended our time with him. So we're going to do another episode. We're going to pick back up on the next shoe in.
Awesome.
And
buy one, get one, folks.
that BOGO, baby. And so with that, you know where to hit us up, shoeinshow.com. You can download us at anywhere you can get your podcasts. And with that, Shoe and Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.